Hello, welcome to this DCS AH-64D tutorial. In this video, I will be going over and covering the attitude and altitude hold autopilots and each of their submodes. To begin, let's talk about our controls. Back in our controls video, we had bound a trimmer hat, force trim hold mode switch. We've already been utilizing the up for the force trimmer to allow us to set our trim for the aircraft. Now we are able to utilize left AT for attitude hold and right AL for altitude hold. D down disables all autopilots, where if we press left to enable attitude autopilot, we could press left again to specifically turn that one off. Same with the right. If we pressed right to turn it on, we can press right again to turn it off, or down to turn off everything. Finally, we also have access to a trim reset to default keybind. I have this on the D press of my trimmer hat. It will allow us to reset our trims to center as if we never adjusted the control inputs. Alright, let's get in the cockpit and talk about our autopilots. The first thing we're going to talk about is our radar altimeter hold autopilot. We can tell it is enabled because in this display here, in the upper right, it says rad alt hold, radar altimeter hold. If those words are there, it means it is turned on. Additionally, you will see a hollow triangle outline here pointing at the center indicator of your rate of descent or ascent. Currently in this open beta patch, it is bugged and not there, but you'll see it when you enable radar altimeter hold. It will have a hollow triangle that does not move when your actual indicator does. I'll go ahead and turn it off. And now the first thing you need to know when utilizing autopilots is you always need to trim your aircraft before you enable one. If you don't, you're going to have a very bad time. So I'll go ahead and trim my aircraft with my force trim. I'll go ahead and raise my altitude some, let's say 270. Alright, and then trimmer hat right, turn on my radar altimeter hold, and we will see the aircraft will do its best to maintain the 270 I set it at. It will bounce up, it will bounce down, and eventually it will settle right on wherever I set it. While that's doing its thing, I will talk about some specifics. So your altitude hold autopilot has two modes: radar and barometric holds. Barometric is above 1,400 feet, and radar is below 1,400 feet. Both altitude autopilots are only able to be used if you are below 40 knots, 40 knots. If you are above that, the autopilot will simply not turn on. Alright, we can see we're pretty stable at the 270 I set. Now that we can see that that worked, I'll talk about some edge use cases. If you're trying to go up and down, say I'm established a hover, I need to pop up to attack something, you can fight the autopilot by giving it power, and it will try and climb, but it's going to try and force you back down. So if I reduce my power again, it's going to start oscillating and correcting like you saw before. So while you can utilize it, you see it's correcting itself back up now. I recommend turning off the autopilot, making your change, doing your action, going back to where you want to be, and then re-engaging it. Don't forget to trim before you enable the autopilot. With altimeter hold, altitude hold out of the way, let's talk about attitude hold. Attitude hold, trimmer hat left, comes in 3 different submodes. Mode 1 is a hover hold from 0 to 5 knots airspeed. From 6 knots to 40 knots, 40 knots, you have Mode 2, velocity hold mode. And above 40 knots, 41 knots and above, you have an attitude hold mode. Let's go ahead and demonstrate those. So I'll go ahead and turn off my attitude hold. I'll get myself out of my hover and I'll demonstrate getting back in it and engaging it. So I want my airspeed to be below 5 knots, ideally 0 or as close to it as possible. I'm going to get myself in as good of a hover as I can, trim my aircraft, and then press trimmer hat left and engage my attitude hold. We will see the aircraft starts to do a little dance. I'm hands off the stick at this point, and it will eventually settle right on the center, just like we saw with our altitude hold. It bounces up and down a little bit until it hits wherever you set it. If you are in a hover hold mode, once again, disable the autopilot before you make any changes to your aircraft's orientation or position. And then once you reestablish yourself and retrim, then re-engage it. If I tried to scoot over now, without turning it off, we see it's still turned on. The aircraft is going to try and fight my inputs, and it's not going to perform or behave how it should. And then if I release my stick, it's going to overcorrect pretty heavily and lead to either unstable flight like this or catastrophic results. I'll go ahead and turn off my autopilot. And now let's talk about velocity hold mode. I'm above 5 knots and below 40, so I can utilize velocity hold. So what I want to do is go ahead and get some kind of stable flight, get below 40, let my speed come down some. Alright, I'll turn on altitude hold and attitude hold. Attitude hold below 40 will be a velocity hold, so we'll try and maintain the speed wherever I turned it on. It'll bounce up and down a little bit, but I'll try and settle just like the other modes you saw. And it'll hold my velocity. Turn off my autopilot, and I'll get above 40 knots, and that will do an attitude hold mode. Alright, I'm above 40 knots. I will retrim, turn on my attitude hold, and now it is a true attitude hold where my hand is off the stick and it is maintaining my orientation, my attitude. That covers all of the autopilots and their basic uses. I hope that helped. Thanks for watching.